Good evening. Let's then begin. My name is Tanya Zlateva, and I am the Dean at Interim of Boston University Metropolitan College. It's a very emotional evening today. We start the celebration of our 50th anniversary. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the kickoff event. We have a lecture and followed by a panel discussion on a topic which has been always at the center of Metropolitan College initiatives, programs, innovation, and how technological innovation specifically fuels entrepreneurship. I would like to acknowledge two of our former deans who are here. Erwin Price. Erwin. Who led the college for 15 years, for the 15 formative years from 75 to 89, and then left us to become president of George Washington, which was such a mistake. And Jay Harfond, who led the college from 2002 till 2012, 13, more than 10 years, and presided over the growth of online education, was instrumental for it. Thank you for coming. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker, Shibulal. We all know him as a Met alum, which warms our heart that a global business leader, philanthropist, and somebody who cares not just for business, but for the people and for the transformation it carries with it, did come and studied at this place, at this college. Shibu's work exemplifies how an understanding of technology, knowledge of technology, expertise in computer science and in general in the sciences, he has a master's in physics from Kerala University, can help you really reinvent and transform both businesses and communities. He co-founded Infosys in 1981 and served the company as chief executive officer and managing director, member of the board, president of Infosys Science Foundation. I do need a cheat sheet because it's a long list of accomplishments. It's one of his main achievements is the global delivery model that set a new standard for delivering outsourced IT services, which basically made Infosys. And he didn't stop after retiring from Infosys. That was, of course, not to be expected, and continued with promoting education, mentoring young entrepreneur, and in general getting involved in what could both develop business and improve quality of life. So he founded Axilor Ventures just a couple of years ago, and this would be an incubator for Indian entrepreneurs. Together with his wife Kumari, he has several foundations that pursue philanthropic initiatives, mostly in health, nutrition, organic farming, and above all, making it possible for talented kids who cannot afford going to school to really get an education. And I'm delighted that Kumari also could join us. Kumari, thank you for coming. And thank you both for the long support for Boston University and Metropolitan College. In addition to his personal companies and initiative, Shibu contributes in a number of national and international bodies. He's a member of the Global Agenda Council on Emerging Multinationals. It's a mouthful, but it does make sense. That's a body in the World Economic Forum. He's co-chair of the National Committee of IT Services and E-commerce of the Confederation of Indian Industry. He's chair of the Board of Governors of the Information and Communication Technology Academy in his native Kerala. And he's trustee of Boston University. But the most important, of course, is that he's our alum, that he chose to come to Boston University Metropolitan College for his second degree, master's degree, to study computer science, and did it as all our students do, by working full-time and caring for a family. And despite all these demands on his time that I enumerated, and for which I did need the cheat sheet, he finds time to stay on our advisory board and to come tonight and deliver the lecture. Thank you, Shibu, and all please welcome me in welcoming Shibu to this evening to BU. Before I turn over control, and you know, teachers don't like turning over control. So, but this is practical. There is a mic on your right side. So please think about questions and just go to the mic. We intentionally have large white rows so you can go through them and line up. So to a very, hopefully, interesting and interactive conversation.
Good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. I feel very privileged to address all of you today. My throat is not doing well, but that's okay. I also would like to thank Professor Tanya for giving me this opportunity to visit Met again and relive some of my old memories. So as Professor Tanya said, I graduated in 1987 and literally disappeared for 20 years. 20 years I was busy working and really never came back to BU. And in 2008, I came here for a commencement speech. And I walked into the Met building, into the, I think, the basement. I meet Professor Tanya. So the first sentence she tells me is that, Shibu, we looked at your grades and they are good. So it's a very good learning to have. Please remember, your grades will be with you forever. I also want to congratulate the faculty, the students, and the alumni of Boston University Metropolitan College for completing 50 years of execution. It's an amazing achievement, 50 years. We talk about Infosys. Infosys is only 33 years, long way to go. For half a century, that is half a century, this college has given opportunity for people to learn and to expand their knowledge and skills. That's wonderful. Congratulations. So today, I thought I will spend some time sharing with you my experience in my professional and personal journey, and also underline some of my basic beliefs, which I have learned over the last 33 years. Let me start with sharing my journey with Infosys and why Infosys is a great example of entrepreneurship. So I'm sure some of you know, Infosys was started in 1981. 7 people joined together to start Infosys. Anybody knows what was the initial capital of Infosys? Anyone here? $250. That's all we had. So we started Infosys with nothing more than a concrete vision to create a globally respected corporation which will provide technology services to corporations across the globe. We had no money. We had no political connections. We did not come from affluent families. And it was a completely different time in India in 1981. The economic and the political scenario was very, very different than it is today. Entrepreneurship was almost an unknown thing in India in 1981. It was an environment of constraints and regulations. Everything in India was regulated in 1981. Now let us go to 2014. By the time I left in 2014, Infosys had become a true multinational. We had a revenue of $8.5 billion, 170,000 people across the globe, 170,000 people. We were listed on 3 different exchanges, Bombay, NASDAQ, and London Exchange. In fact, we were the first Indian company to be listed on NASDAQ. That happened in 1999. We were the first Indian company to roll out an employee stock option plan. I know in US it is very common to have an employee stock option plan, but in 90s it was unheard of to have employee stock option plan in India. We were the first Indian company to get CMM level 4 certification, first to get CMM level 5. So many firsts for Infosys over the years. We had an enviable reputation for its corporate governance, ethical standards, and corporate social responsibility. In fact, we have won numerous awards for corporate governance, Best Employer of the Year, Best Socially Responsible Corporation, all of those. In fact, half of the corporate governance norms in India today are pioneered by Infosys over the last 15 years. Whatever we pioneered, in fact, it was not about pioneering, it was actually learning from the best in the world and executing to it. That's what we basically did. We learned from the best across the globe and practiced it. And today, most of them have become standards for corporate governance in India. Not only we built a company, we in many ways contributed towards building an industry. The success of Infosys was an impetus for the IT industry in India. It built credibility for India. I don't know how many of you, there are few Indians here. If you traveled outside India, when I started traveling outside India in 1980, the first one was in 1981, most people whom I meet, the vision of India was what they have seen on TV. Snake charmers, cows on the road, and elephants. That's what they will ask you about. So do you think you have, we hear that you have the cows on the road. Do you have cows on the road? By late 90s, if you are an Indian and you meet somebody outside, the first thing they will ask you is, are you from Bangalore? Are you a software engineer? So fundamentally, we shifted the perception about India across the globe. So now let me reflect back on my journey with Infosys over the last 33 years. It was, of course, a roller coaster ride with more highs than lows, but immensely satisfying one over the long period of time. In fact, a lot of people ask me this question: when you started Shibu, did you think that you will make it big? we absolutely did not think that we will make it big. In fact, to reach from 7 employees to 170,000 employees was absolutely unimaginable for us when we started in 1981. Let me share with you some of my learnings. Actually, I will talk about 4 different things. The first one is what I call the value of execution. I'm a person who believes that ideas are dime a dozen. Anybody can come up with an idea, but it's extremely difficult to execute. If you look at Infosys, we were founded on 2 fundamental ideas, 2 different ideas. Number 1, we believed that technology will become ubiquitous over a period of time. Now remember, this is in 1981. Cell phones were not invented. PCs were not there. All you had was the mainframes and some minis in the market. But we took a bet that technology will become ubiquitous over a period of time. That was the number 1 bet which we took. The second idea was that service industry will get globalized. Now imagine, manufacturing had gotten globalized by 80s. We were actually manufacturing things in China and other parts of the world and selling it in US and in wherever, in retail stores. But service getting globalized was a completely novel idea in 1981. Now this is a fundamental shift. If you look at 81, let's say there is a project to be done in Boston. Fidelity wants to do a project in Boston. What will happen is, the work will get done in Boston. People will fly in from all over the world into Boston and do the work. That's what service industry was about. Basically, the workers went where the work was. And we fundamentally argued that we can change the paradigm. Instead of workers coming to work, we will take the work to the workers. Basically flip the model. And that was the fundamental innovation we came up with. That is what we call the global delivery model. So as I said, we took these 2 bets. I want to tell you a very small story to give you the context in which we took this bet in 1981. So myself and Kumari, she's here, we were married in 79. And 81 when I came to US, she stayed back in India, so I came alone. Now, all of you have cell phone. You can pick up your cell phone, dial a number anywhere in the world, and it will get connected. 81, that was not possible. There was no direct dialing to India. So to make a phone call, I have to book a trunk call, something called a trunk call. Has anybody booked a trunk call in this room? Tarun, there is one person. But the point is, you book a call, you call the operator and say, I want to talk to a number in India. Usually it used to take about 24 hours. That was the wait. 24 hours later, the call will come through. When the call comes through, there are 4 people on the line. You have the Boston operator, the New York operator, there will be an operator in Delhi, there will be an operator in my state who is holding the call, and she is at the other end. And we are newly married. And today, if you make a call to India, it is 1 cent a minute. Google Voice will make a call for you 1 cent a minute. It used to be $9 a minute in 1981. And my entire compensation was $500. That means 10 minutes will be $90. So what we did was we devised a code. 1 means I love you. 2 means I miss you. 3 means, something else. So we'll pick up the phone and say 137, bye. I just want to give you the context in which Infosys was built, and we took this dream, saying that we will actually globalize service industry as well as we will look forward to ubiquitous technology. So, as I said, execution was the key to our success. It was not about having an idea, it was about executing to the idea that we can do this. So we not only had to execute, but we had to execute ahead of time because the world was not ready for this idea. We were the first movers. We did not wait for the world to change. Rather, we were the agents of change. So we had to evangelize the idea. We had to go to our clients and say, this can be done. We had to take baby steps. We had no role models to follow. In fact, in my initial presentation, in fact, I did one of my first sales presentations right here to Digital Equipment Corporation. The first time I went there, when I told them I'm from Bangalore, I could figure out that they had no idea where I am coming from. So next time onwards, I used to carry a world map, and I used to say, this is Asia, this is Bangalore, this is where I come from, I speak English. This is how I used to start my sales presentations in 80s. So, but we did one thing. We learned. We learned from the best corporations across the globe. We learned how to execute, and we practiced every bit of it. As I said, we innovated the global delivery model. It allowed us to take the work to the worker rather than worker to the work. So if we are doing a project in Boston, let's say it is 100 people project, we will do 90 people work or 80 people work in our centers in India or in China and deliver it completely seamless to the client. And that is what we call the global delivery model. As I said, we did many other things. To build credibility, we benchmarked ourselves with the world's best practices. So we got ISO 9000 certification in 1998. There was Software Institute of Carnegie Mellon had a standard called Capability Maturity Model, CMM. We got level 5 certified in 98 and level 4 certified in 98 and level 5 in 1999. That is the highest level. So by the time we got level 5 certified, we could walk into any client and say, we can execute your projects at the highest levels of maturity. In fact, late 90s, the success rate of an IT project was 40%. And we were running projects, 95% of our projects were running within time, within budget. In the period between 2005 and 2014, at least 6 years, we were in the top 20 most innovative company list of Forbes. Forbes used to publish most innovative company list across the globe, and we were in the top 20, at least 6 out of the 10 years between 2005 and 2014. We did many, many things. It was not only about executing software projects. We had to, we were in a country which had a very bad brand. We had to build our own infrastructure. So here, for example, in Boston, you can get infrastructure. You can get world-class infrastructure. You don't have to worry about the power. You don't have to worry about the water. But when you are building this in India, you have to worry about all of these things. So we built our campuses, world-class campuses. In fact, we visited multiple campuses in US and in Europe to learn how to build a campus. And we built it. Not only they were for our own purpose, it was actually to show the world that we can do this in India. I remember the previous Prime Minister, when he visited, he said that these are the modern temples of India because this is where employment was getting created. So he called them the modern temples of India. So that was the first learning. Execution is the key to success. The second is about the power of the founding team. We had a wonderful founding team. Number one, we were 7 people. Most companies today get founded by 2 or 3 people, but we were 7. We focused on the larger purpose of the organization and gave up on our individual aspirations. That's what we did for many, many, many years. We were lucky to have 7 people. We had mutually exclusive skills, not collectively comprehensive, but we had mutually exclusive skills. But the most important thing is that we stayed together for 33 years, most of us. One person left in 89, but others stayed back. It's almost impossible to imagine that you can stay in an organization for 33 years working with the same set of people. Marriages don't last. So this had to last more than a marriage. And I have learned that the smarter the people are, the harder to stay together. Because with 7 people, there will be 7 ideas. And there will be immediate conflict. So there were always differences. There were always differences of opinion. It is not that we did not fight. We fought. We argued. Luckily, we had a leader whom we all respected, Mr. Murthy. He was older to us. He was also extremely well respected. So it gave us an opportunity to, it was a privilege. We had a leader who would come in after all the arguments and gave a decision. We'll all follow it. So I always tell entrepreneurs who start companies together saying that who is the leader? And immediately I will get an answer, we are all equal. I said that doesn't work. You need somebody to be in charge. You need somebody to make that final call. Otherwise you cannot proceed. You will get stuck on arguments. So as I said, we had the privilege of having Mr. Murthy, who was older to us and very well respected. So it made it very easy for us to resolve some of the conflicts. To stay together as a team also involved a lot of personal sacrifices on the part of the founders. It required us to raise above our personal aspirations and focus on the common goal, that is building the organization. As I said, 8 years into our journey, we had a very soul-searching moment. One of the founders, Ashok Arora, decided to leave us. We were torn whether to wind it down or to continue. And we took a decision to continue and never looked back. And we never regretted that decision to continue. Now, we are in 2015 and a lot of people look at Infosys over the last 15 years. There's somewhere between 2000 to 2015 and it will look like a dream run. Right? It looked like a dream run. In 2000 we were probably 8,000 people and today you are 180,000 people. Amazing journey, dream run. But that's not how Infosys was built. It was built brick by brick with persistence and lot of teamwork. It was built brick by brick over the 33 years. As Steve Jobs once put it, I'm convinced that about half of what separates successful entrepreneurs from the non-successful one is pure perseverance. And that's exactly what we did. We had ups, we had downs, we had wins, we had losses, we had failed, we had very hard times in between, but we stayed on and paid the dues. Individually also, it is a very difficult thing to stay on for 33 years. In this age, it is almost rare that somebody will stay in an organization for 33 years. It requires a lot of loyalty and commitment to the organization. It was not that I had one single job at Infosys. Remember, when I joined Infosys in 1981, I was barely moving out of being a coding person to a project manager. I had one master's in 77. I started out as a software engineer, so I was basically coding and moved on to becoming a project manager just in 1981. And when I retired in 2014, I was the chief executive officer. In between, I must have done at least 11 jobs. Every 3 years, I will change my job. I was a founder, I was the chief operating officer, I was a chief executive officer, I was head of a business, I was a salesperson beating the pavement in various parts of the world. So every one of these jobs requires completely different skills. It is very rare for somebody to get from being a coder to a chief executive officer. Which means you have to continuously reinvent. Not only you have to learn, you have to unlearn every 3 to 4 years. And that is a journey which individual has to take. So if I look at my life and choose one single thing which made me successful, that is the lifelong learning attitude I had. That was the one single attribute which made me, the most important attribute which made me successful was that lifelong learning philosophy. In fact, going to BU itself was an example of this. This was in 1980. We had no money. Of course, I was already married. We had our first child by then, actually 80. Yeah, and I took the masters over a long period of time because I couldn't afford. And I had to go back to India in between. So I did it over a period of time. But what drove me was that approach, that I have to continuously learn so that I can continue to go up and do better things in the organization. So that was the second learning I had, the power of the founding team, if you can stay together. The third is what I call the value of the values. Every organization needs a clearly articulated set of values which is based on fairness, integrity, meritocracy, and transparency. There should be zero tolerance to deviation from these ethical norms. Now, this is even more important in a country like India, where there is serious lack of transparency, especially then than now. Right? The tone of the organization is always set at the top. So the top sets the tone for the organization, and it is very important that the top makes all the decisions in a legal and ethical manner. Our chairman used to tell us that the purpose of a corporation is to create wealth for its stakeholders, that is the investors, the employees, the customers, and the society at large, in a legal and ethical manner. It is extremely important to lead by example. It is not about setting the tone, because as a leader, what you do is what others will do. Others will follow. So it's extremely important to lead by example. In my mind, that is the most powerful way to get moral authority over your people. Now, leading by example can be quite difficult at times. Infosys has gone through good times and bad times. Getting listed on NASDAQ, being the first Indian company to get listed on NASDAQ, was a good time leading by example. Once we did it, others did it. Today there are probably many companies who are listed on NASDAQ. See, when I say getting listed on NASDAQ, the important thing is the governance standard which you need to keep. If you are listed on the Bombay Stock Exchange, the level of governance required is very different than getting listed on NASDAQ. For example, Infosys has to be a SOX compliant organization, even though it is not a US corporation. In 2002, so there has been many tough situations in this journey. In 2002, our head of sales resigned due to a sexual misconduct allegation. That is a very difficult thing for Infosys to do because he was the head of sales. To my knowledge, I have never met somebody who is as capable in sales as that person. But we still had to take a decision to let him go because of the moral standards which we kept. There are many other examples. In 1999, Infosys started the Infosys Foundation, which was, we went to the shareholders and told them that 2% of our profits we want to put towards the CSR work. This is, again, unheard of that in India at that point in time. Interestingly enough, India now has a law. The central government has passed a law, federal government has passed a law, which says that every corporation has to spend 2% of their profit on CSR work. I would tend to believe that it originated when we did this in 1999 publicly. Infosys Science Foundation is also another example of leading by example. So having a very well articulated value system is extremely important to sustain the corporation. Interestingly enough, I know this is a little bit of self-drumming, but Forbes India just published Heroes of Philanthropy list. Just recently, about a month back. In Asia, they have, for Asia actually, for the world, but for Asia also. It was released last month. There are 4 Infosys founders on the list. On the Forbes India annual Heroes of Philanthropy list. For India, there are totally 9 people. There are 9 people in India listed, and 4 of them are associated with Infosys. The last learning which I want to share, I already shared 3. The last one, the 4th one, is probably the most important one. Building a successful business is not a sprint, but a marathon. It may consist of a series of sprints, but ultimately, it is those who are willing to persevere, even in the face of temporary setbacks, who ultimately taste success. As I said, we were started in 1981. By 1999, we were $100 million. So it took us 18 years to go from 0 to $100 million. In 2004, we crossed $1 billion, 23 years. In 2006, we crossed $2 billion. So we say this, it took us 23 years to get to $1 billion and 23 months to get to the next billion. So it was clearly a marathon. It was not a sprint. So it took a long while for us to taste success. We stayed the course and paid the dues. So I talked about all the 4 learnings I had. Let me conclude with a final thought which is very near to my heart. Now it may sound very Eastern, but then I come from the East and my beliefs and values originate from the East. Today I talked about my entrepreneurship journey with Infosys and my learning thereof. I stressed on the importance of executing an idea well, importance of teamwork and values. I talked about hard work, lifelong learning, focus and commitment. Finally, I emphasized upon the importance of persevering in the long run. Now the question is this all it takes to be successful? I do not think so. I do not think so. If I look at Infosys, there is a big factor, there is a huge factor which helped us. Can anybody name it? What is the 5th factor which helped us?
Maybe a bit of luck.
Luck. Exactly. Luck. So, one also needs luck. It can be called luck, God's grace, or being at the right place at the right time. Now the question is it pure chance? I believe luck is a product of our beliefs and actions. Hence, when we do all the above, we should also invite luck through our thoughts and actions, through our respect for elders and teachers, through our caring for our parents, through our concern for our environment and society, and finally, through our sense of fairness. So, dear friends, I wish you luck, optimism, and success with all your future endeavors. Godspeed. Thank you very much. I don't know how much time we have left, but I can take a couple of questions.
Met computer science faculty. Hello, alumni. 2 questions. The first one is, what was the code number 3 and 7? But I'm kidding. That's. But the real question is, I'm originally from India, so I appreciated your comment on the challenges of ethics and how you were going against the tide. Apparently, that was a key foundational principle for Infosys. Can you tell us what kind of challenges you faced within this context within India? And do you think you had the same ethical challenges out here as well, dealing with any kind of customers?
So the question is about ethical challenges. The question is India being a country with a bit of non-transparency, what are the kind of challenges Infosys faced? See, let me give you some numbers. I think that will speak a volume. Even today, the revenue of Infosys, when I left in 2014, the revenue of Infosys from India is 3%. So this is a company which is founded in India, executed in India with 70% or 80% of the staff in India. Revenue is 3%. So there was a conscious decision to not to do some of the work in India and focus outside. And that was a big challenge, right? Because most companies, then the local market is the most important market. That's where you can try out new things. You can make all your mistakes. But we took a choice to do the other way. Now, in the very beginning, you can say it's a demand and supply issue. Right? Demand was all outside, so it was a good decision to make. But that is not true. As time went by, there was a demand in India also. But we chose the other path. So that is number one. There has been a number of occasions where we would have walked out of opportunities because of these issues. But one thing to remember is that I always believe that people behave to your expectation, right? So the system started behaving to our expectation once we stood the ground. Once we stood the ground, everyone says, oh, Infosys, they won't do it. So why go there and waste your time? So I think it worked to our favor over a period of time. The second question, I think even today, if you look at the revenue, I think 2014, 64% must be US, 24 or so must be Europe, 6% Australia. So most of our revenue comes from developed countries. Of course, the demand is higher in those countries, but I think it also has something to do with the ease of operations. Ease of operations. Yes.
This is a question from somebody in the webcast. It's Chris Kaiser says, can you comment on the consequences of being first to market versus the importance of software integrity?
Please repeat. First.
Can you comment on the consequences of being first to market versus the importance of software integrity?
Software integrity.
Software integrity.
So please remember, we were not a product organization. The question is about first to market versus software integrity. That question is much more relevant to, in my mind, to a product corporation, which is giving products to the market. Infosys was a service organization for many, many years. The main product of Infosys happened when we rolled out Banks 2000, which is a commercial banking package. So in a service industry, the software integrity question is, when you are doing service, you are providing custom software to your clients. The software integrity question is actually there, but it is not as severe as a product, because I'm not saying it is not severe, but it is not as severe as a product because you are working with the client on a continuous basis. Having a CMM level 4, level 5 certification allowed us to actually create a level of integrity far better than what the industry was used to in 80s and 90s. So we were, as I said, in 90s, the success rate of an IT program was 40%. And we took that number up to 95, 96%. So we were far ahead of the industry in our quality and timeliness by late 90s. See, first to market has other challenges. So that's what I said. First to market is about being a change agent rather than following somebody. So we had to be the evangelist, we had to be the change agent, we had to be the ones who will convince the world that it can be done in a different manner. Those were the challenges when you are first to market for us.
Can you hear me okay? Or?
Sure.
Hi, I'm Axilor Ventures. Thank you very much for your thoughtful presentation and enjoyed many of the ideas you shared. I'm wondering about, I have a couple of questions. I guess internet security, will there ever be a hack-proof technology? It seems to be the motivation behind the Ashley Madison hackers. I think they said that they wanted to prove that there was no such thing as a hack-proof site. Also, what do you think of Apple's latest announcement to block advertising? And I guess big data. Do you have any ideas on how big data can solve all our problems?
So the first one, I don't believe there will be ever a hack-proof situation. I don't believe, because the smarter you get, there are more smarter people outside. So it will continue to be like this. Whatever you do, there will be somebody else who can actually penetrate it or break it or something they can do. That is number one. That doesn't mean that we should stop trying. We have to keep trying. And I used to build security systems for banks in between. So you have to keep trying. Your third question was about, the second question I'm not answering. What is the third question? That was about big data. So that's a very interesting question. Actually, I'm a person who believes that, if you look at the career I had over the last 33 years, the first job I had was with the public corporation in Mumbai. And I joined the department called Data Processing Department, data. It's called EDP, Electronic Data Processing. And by the time I moved into 1980s, the department got renamed as Information Technology. So we moved from data to information by late 80s, early 90s. In the last 15 years or 10 years, we have been hearing a lot about insights, right? Because, the recommendations on Yahoo or on Google or on Amazon, it is all based on insights. So we have moved from data to information to insights. So recently I bought a car, which is a Mercedes-Benz GLK 350. And if I try to change the lane without putting on the indicator, it won't let me change. It will stop me from changing. It's an option, but it will stop me from changing the lane. I have not turned on the indicator. It is not going to vibrate. It is not going to tell me don't change. It is not going to change. So you are moving towards this direction, right? You are going from insight to taking action on the insight. You are starting to be intelligent. Right? What is intelligence? You are taking a decision without consulting the driver. So you are seeing this shift. I have seen this shift from data to information to insight to intelligence. And I think that is where this big data analytics will play a huge part. And I think as time goes by, we will see a lot more of intelligence, or at least decision-making by machines without consulting you. And that will be based on the big data analytics behind it.
Hi. I was very intrigued by how Infosys has changed the paradigm of service delivery towards the global service delivery. So in many situations, as you said, execution is everything, right? You have a brilliant idea, but then you have to convince people that it's a brilliant idea. So how did you do it? Could you tell us maybe a story or two that can illustrate how you did it and how others can perhaps can change the paradigm? If they have a brilliant idea and they want to change the world?
So the question is about how did we do this? How did we build the execution? Right. So I think the first one is, I think we were lucky enough to be in front of the customers on day one. That was first part. Because you can have an idea, you can try to execute, but Finally, it is determined by the acceptance of the client. Even to change the client's mindset, you have to be in front of the client, right? And so we were lucky enough to be in front of the client on day one. So I'll give you this example of working with Digital Equipment Corporation here in Boston. So I used to go up there. Finally, it comes down to sheer doggedness and perseverance. I used to go up there. At that time, I wasn't driving. Remember, Infosys was a very poor company in the 80s. So I wasn't driving. Kumari was driving. So, and I was working full time and coming to BU for my evening courses. So lunchtime, I used to go up from Acton to Maynard. Right, Maynard. She used to drive. I had a 1.5-year-old baby, so we used to go up there. And they will throw me out. As usual, you know, this Indian with long hair. I used to have long hair also, long hair. Finally, after some 20 visits, I kept telling them that we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. One person by the name, the name doesn't come through, but told me, Shibu, we will give you a chance. There is some conversion work to be done, right? We will give you this job. I still remember when I went, so I told him, we will do, Infosys will do it, no problem. So he said, Shibu, remember, they should do it in 8 hours a day. Anybody can do it in 15 hours a day. My people will also do it in 15 hours a day. They have to do it in 8 hours a day. They have to show it to me that they can do it in 8 hours a day. And this is some technology to some technology which we have never heard of. We never heard. So I told them, people came from US, that was not done on global delivery model. The global delivery model happened afterwards. So what they basically did was learned everything and came. They read the manuals, learned everything and came. And the program was for 6 months. Some 2 people came. Actually, I still see these people who came on that program. And they did such a wonderful job. That opened up the window. And then I could convince them that this can be done, part of this can be done in India. Remember, there were no telephone lines, there was nothing available. Tapes, we used to carry tapes, those big round tapes. Right? We used to carry. Infosys installed the first international link in 1992. I did that in 92. That itself was a different story. International link at that time used to cost $100,000. One uplink and downlink of 64 kbps. For that, today I can buy a telecom company. So it was that expensive, but it was step by step. Then luckily, I was working at Reebok International here, and they wanted something to be done. They wanted a package to be developed. We seized the opportunity. We went, and it was for the Reebok International and Reebok France. We seized the opportunity. So it was convincing them. See, this was about a different methodology of doing it, right? So we used to be extremely good at land and penetrate, what we used to call land and expand. So we would convince the clients to give us a small piece of work. And in early 80s and the early 90s, it was all cowboy approach. It wasn't that we had all the processes ironed out, checklist, all the project management, nothing was in place. See, Infosys' average age is 27 and a half. So we allowed them to do whatever was right for the clients. And they used to land, they used to do excellent work, they used to convince the clients that we can do more, and that's how it happened. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so my name is István Bonihely. I'm from the Metropolitan College undergraduate entrepreneurship program. And my guest speaker CEOs usually told me that if you want to learn from me, ask about my mistakes. Oh. So my question is, what was your biggest regret of your life and entrepreneurship? And thank you very much for this very inspiring lecture.
So, biggest regrets in life. There are many regrets in life. Kumari still tells me that she is still waiting for me to spend time with her. So it's 1 year into retirement now. Regrets in life.
I mean, entrepreneurship.
First of all, I'm a person who, I have a philosophical issue. I am not a person who believes in hindsight. Right? Hindsight really has no value, according to me, because you take decisions based on the information you have at that point in time. And, you move on. 1 year later, you will have a lot more information. I can look back and say, if I had this information, I can take it. I don't see any value in that. So, in that regard, I don't have too many regrets in life. I don't have. Life has been extremely kind to me, so I should leave it to that.
Thank you very much.